Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Joshino and today we're talking again about the future of Paladins and looking into the future to the year 2019 and especially to the next patch which will be fully announced on the 20th and some pretty huge reworks that are coming through. Even if the changes themselves seem rather small at first, I'm going to try and walk you through why these are very important. And the developers, since my last video which I talked about the cauterized kits and cards in my last video, this is kind of continuation of that and going into a bit more detail that the developers just talked about in another developer stream. As always, as I go through this video, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on anything I talk about, and be sure to interact with anybody that you see commenting on it about your opinions too, and also have some polls running in the cards too. Anyway, let's just jump straight into it. One of the big things coming is that they're taking away one talent for every champion. So those 4 talents for each champion is going down to 3. Originally, this was added, as the developers said, as sort of a progression mechanic in Open Beta 64, which if you don't know what it is, don't worry too much, but Cards Unbound was a dark time for Paladins where a lot of the emphasis was put into grinding and opening loot boxes and RNG, and the grind was pretty huge, and that was the way they were trying to monetize, which has now gone, thankfully, to sort of a better free-to-play model where everything is in the skins and cosmetics, which is great in my opinion. All the cards are open to everybody. There's some grinding for the champions, but it's not as big as it was. And a lot of the 4th cards they added were either not thought out very highly or generally didn't add as much to the game. And one of my biggest criticisms is that they found it hard originally to balance 3 talent cards, and 4 talent cards made it rather impossible to try and balance all 4 to be actually useful in the game. Usually there's either 1 or 2 talent cards that are actually useful in the game. So with taking one away, it's going to be much easier to balance all 3 for each of the champions. And I actually come from a time where there were no talent cards in the game, and a lot of the talent cards took away a lot of stuff from the loadout cards in the game. Now, before I talk about some of the individual champions they've brought up with, they've actually brought up quite a few in some of the changes and the talent cards that are going. So another thing that I talked about a bit more in my other video was the change to taking away cards in your decks that do healing reduction, damage to shields, reveals, and crowd control reduction will all go from characters' kits as well. So loadouts are actually also going to get more interesting in the fact that loadouts will go from having these sort of base stat reductions to having things like cards that change your abilities. The example they gave last time was to Drogos, so they're making one with a larger salvo radius and also a larger fire spit to sort of give them individual abilities more potent effects, whilst also taking out sort of the cookie cutterness and some of the damage issues in the last patch. I did talk about this in my last video, but basically the healing reduction cards in the deck meant that at the very start of the game you could get, with some champions, Death and Taxes Lian, which is going, that's one of the talent cards that's being removed. You could take away 90% of healing to all champions just on your weapon shots. And a lot of champions, Cassie Fernando, and a lot of us have low cooldown abilities which you fired at enemies that would also give something with a high cauterize. The idea is then that the time to kill will gradually get shorter as the game goes on as champions buy out cauterize and Wrecker to get rid of shields and healing. Whilst I talk about this, developers did say that there is not going to be any nerfs to frontlines or healers straight away, or at least initially, although it's likely that the public test server will be 3 weeks to a month, so we'll probably be able to give a lot of feedback on how this is actually working out. And you've got to remember that the changes don't completely remove Cauterize or Wrecker. They still will counter, or should, either the full heal meme teams or 3 tank death ball sort of compositions. Although we'll just have to see how strong the healers are as I jump into some of the card changes, because some of the healers are actually getting buffed up here. So one worth talking about straight off the bat is Genos. So his legendary card is Celestial Touch is going. This one gave the percentage heal to allies. However, what they've said is that this will be merged into his base kit, although it's likely a smaller percentage based health heal will be made into his normal heals to generally give him more consistent heals, as Genos has actually been pushed out of the meta and has been seen as a bit of a weaker healer these past few patches. He does sort of work with a 3 damage comp if he was buffing up damage, but definitely has fallen out a bit of grace. Also, they mentioned Ceres, whose Void Abides talent will also be integrated into their base kit. This is the card that does the healing that spreads out from allies to allies that are close to the person that you're healing. They will also get a percentage of that healing. I don't know whether it's going to be the base 50% that's in the legendary card or lower. I'd guess lower if it's going to be put into the base kit, but also taking Ceres up and into those top tier of champions. Some of the champions that were mentioned, so Tyra, her first blood legendary card, which was the one that gave you lifesteal, is actually going to now become base, and that talent will be retired and taken out. However, it will now become part of Tyra's actual makeup as a character, who in competitive play for a long time has struggled to make it into those top tiers. And this is going to help her out a little bit and give her a bit of a flavor and an identity in the realm. Makoa is going to have their spinning talent, which I'm almost certain is David Jones' Locker, is going to be removed. This was just a silly card. I mean, in some ways it was fun, but nobody was using it, and honestly, if you took it, it didn't really do anything for you. Made you even worse, really. So I can see why they've taken it out. One big buff that so many people are going to be happy for, all these Maeve mains, is a little bit of a nudge to her survivability. So that is, actually this was how it was when she originally was released. So her 9 lives ability, this is your reset. Your Q or your first ability will now heal you again for that 500 health. This then will remove the talent Artful Dodger, which basically took it away from her main kit, and will put it back again. So actually a lot of the talent cards in the game did take away from the champion's original design, I'd guess. So it's nice to see some of this going back into the kit, or at least going into the loadout cards. And this may very well make her more survivable. And as I talked about the inbuilt Cauterize going, the no more anti-healing in people's loadouts could give her a bit more of a chance to dive and heal herself before she might get to some actual heals from her healers in the backlines. VHS, do I hear a VHS? I need healing, says probably every Maeve ever, but there we go, she probably won't have to spam the VHS as much anymore. And it just generally is just going to make it a bit more survivable when you're going one-on-one, toe-to-toe with champions, at least until they get that Cauterize 3, but you've got to remember your Q will cleanse too. So it's going to be quite strong, because you're going to be able to double it up to almost 1,000 healing, at least on the second one. Next up, Drogos has had basically a rework to their Wormjets, and the developers found it hard to explain this. However, they're saying that basically they've taken away the effect of it just basically buffing your movement speed, so it gave you more sort of momentum. So Wormjets were sort of just spamming little hops and you'd go faster around the map. Now it will actually basically give you more acceleration upwards and more fuel for your buck to fly. And the devs hinted at the fact that if you have the right loadout, you'll be able to almost stay airborne indefinitely. So it could be that Drogos will work a lot more like Pharaoh with this particular loadout and this particular talent card, and just sort of be able to hover all the time and do damage that way, and try and maybe even flank a little bit to stay in the air and behind certain amounts of cover. Although it'll be interesting how it will interact with the maps, as Paladins maps are typically more open, there's less cover, there's less little crannies to get behind, but we'll just have to see how this plays out, and at the very least I think it'll be fun to play around with when we first get our hands on it. One that's a little bit unfortunate is Eevee Over the Moon is Going. Now this was the card that gave you the extra damage on the saw, and you made these fun builds where you reset with cards the saw whenever you got a kill. So reset, you get a kill, you keep soaring basically all the time. It was a fun talent, and it was something very fun to watch on a good Eevee, so kind of sad to see that go. There are also some reworks to abilities and to talent cards which I thought I'd just talk about. They're not necessarily getting away or related to this, but quite big changes too. So Strix unauthorized use, the flare will no longer reveal enemy players. However, the projectile will be faster and easier to hit. So, hallelujah, you're not going to have Strixers being able to spam the reveal all of the time, although you're still going to be able to use your flare with other loadouts normally with other talent cards, so it was all reveal. However, this one will mean that you'll be able to get more damage with the flare and use it sort of as a bonus to your pistol. However, at the cost of not having that reveal, which I think will be nice for people to not just be completely spammed out all the time, but that Strix reveal, which is one of the most annoying things in the game. It won't necessarily win you the game, but it's just not nice to be seen by the enemy team all the time. It just feels like they have a wall hack. Next up, Khan's ultimate is now going to be a projectile, which will be thrown like a hand, and basically you'll have to hit somebody and grab them before dumpstering them off the edge of the map to their doom. So if you do get the hit off, the devs have explained that you'll be taken into third person with them grabbing by that thrown hand, and then you'll be able to toss them. They also said that there'll be a refund with the ultimate if you do miss a shot, but it will put your ultimate at 30% again, which will be a bit like the Drogos if you miss that ultimate too, which I think is an interesting mechanic. So it doesn't punish you completely for missing this projectile, but obviously, I mean, 30% is still a long way off trying to get it again. Another change is to Xin. So the counter ability will be changed from a melee attack to a projectile strike, which will go from his crosshairs. So it sounds a lot more like a Androxus reversal, and because of the animation, it'll probably look a lot more like the Genji Armada block that he does to fire back. They didn't go into depth about retaliation. I'm going to guess that's going to go. Otherwise, that would work out very interestingly. That would very much be like Genji's reversal, I guess, if you're firing out all these little projectiles. However, they have said that these projectiles won't be the damage that you're taking. They'll just be the damage of your melee strike before. So instead of swinging in front of you, they'll become these projectiles that you can fire out. And you can basically aim them, so if somebody fires at your left and you're looking at another enemy, then it'll fire at the other enemy rather than firing straight back at the enemy that fired at you. Another champion change that they mentioned was Skye, and this is in her smoke screen. So they've completely reworked this, so it doesn't block the line of sight anymore. So when you were in front of the smoke, you wouldn't see any enemies, and I can see how it is a bit jarring. It is one of the effects that is a bit different in the game. There isn't anything else like it. I'm not sure 100% about getting rid of it, but there we go. But now what's going to happen is that it will basically reset your ability. So when you go into stealth and you go out of stealth, if you're in the smoke, about every 0.8 seconds, it will trigger your ability again so you can go back into stealth. It'll also mean that cards that apply effects on entry now get reapplied every time this ticks. So say the movement speed buff, if you go outside of the smoke, you're moving fast, and you come back into the smoke again, you'll get that invisibility and also that movement speed again. So the idea is that these smokes are going to be sort of like a safe area and like a reset for you to sort of dip in and out of. And obviously area of effect champions, like big damage dealers, are probably going to try and drop their bombs there, sticky bombs, whatever, trying to blow up a fire spit into it. But I do think it's an interesting way to try and balance her for all levels of play and for systems. She's hard to play against currently as a new player on PC with less map knowledge, and it does make it more obvious where she'll come from, whilst also buffing Skye herself in these bonuses in a way that I guess would work more with competitive on PC. However, she has been working out quite a bit with Debilitate and just deleting tanks. They didn't say which talent was going away this time around. Debilitate is kind of annoying, I'm not going to lie, but I don't know whether they're going to be taking that away. And as always, this definitely needs to be seen in matches, how it works, along with the Drogo stuff and things that are just going to be completely changed and completely different. They have said as well they're looking at Terminus with fixing the alt issues and animation issues related to map interactions and things. They say they know about it. I kind of wish that they'd just put Terminus on hold for a little bit, maybe block him off from at least ranked play at the moment, but we'll just have to see what they do there. They also, a little spicy tidbit, mentioned that Imani is having a change since my last video about Imani, so if you want to check that out, it'll be in the cards. But they're swapping the stances with the ice and fire. So before they were like the same mechanic, they were both like a Shaolin arrow, you drew it back, then fired it, but instead you sort of charged a bit of magic that you fired out, either ice or a fireball. Now Frost is a straight projectile refire, like a Cassie crossbow shot, compared to the fire blast, the fireball, which would be more like a Shaolin bow drag. So you charge up a big shot, then do big damage. Just a bit of a spicy addition there. Also, they're working, and it's ETA much later on in 2019, Moji going into a healer rather than a flank. She hasn't really worked out very well as a flank, and even Moji have found it very hard to try and balance her to fit her in. And I think she could work well as a healer with a sort of vomity head doing the healing. like a constant heal, and maybe even proccing the extra damage that will go into your main head-banging projectile damage. And you could also, you could also imagine perhaps a shield also doing heal to your allies whenever you take damage in an AoE with a certain talent card, almost like a Grover heal, but rely on enemies' damage. And also she has that heal with Toot and things like that anyway, maybe that could even be cycled into a main kit to do that AoE healing that you sort of fart out, sprinkle dust behind you. Okay, so the other thing I haven't talked about, and which also affects all the champions, is they're also removing restrictions on item categories. So, for example, you could get all blue cards during a match, or all red cards. Plus, they've talked about selling items at full price in spawn, less when you've left the spawn, although this isn't actually thought out completely. And they're also looking at reworking Veteran and Bulldozer, either perhaps being removed or merged into other cards, or being made much less expensive. They actually mentioned that Lifesteal was going to be made less expensive, and they had talked about maybe merging Wrecker and Bulldozer together. Now, there has been a lot of concern about these cards in that damage champions might just pick up Wrecker and Cauterize straight away, and that champion is going to be able to do both. However, my thing is that currently champions can do that already base, so a champion can pick up the Cauterize in their ability to like 75%, or even in the case of Leon up to 90%. Then during the match get the Wrecker so that they have both Wrecker and the Cauterize at their highest values. Whereas here, you still have to earn that during the match. You're not likely going to have both level 3 Cauterize and level 3 Wrecker, even perhaps at the end of a moderate match or a short match. You're still going to have to decide whether or not you want to focus mainly on Cauterize or on Wrecker and what you are putting your focus into. It does make some interesting choices though with, say, the new Tyre with the Lifesteal, whether you're going to pair that up with other healing, because you don't really need to pick up the Lifesteal now as a damage dealer. If you need the sustain, you could even take up some more Rejuvenate to get more heals, kill to heal and things like that on top of your heals at the moment. And seeing as heals are going to be a bit more strong as Cauterize and Loadouts is gone, so it'll be interesting to see how that'll work out. And generally, I think it's a relatively okay change. I don't think this one's necessarily great, but definitely I just need to see this one in action. But I can't see champions stacking too much of the big damage reduction, just damage reduction, or just a anti-shield and anti-Cauterize. I think at the moment the problem with the item store is that the variety is quite small. Tanks will get their Cauterize, Rejuvenate, and 1 damage reduction. Flankers will get their Cauterize, damage reduction, maybe some Lifesteal. Now this is going to open it up a little bit more, so perhaps they can go for 2 aggressive cards. Perhaps they'll go for some healing cards. Perhaps they'll go for both of the defensive cards. It just means that there's a lot more options out there, and that just another level of depth to the game. But be sure to let me know what you think in the comments section below about this change. As always, everything can change, and this is going to go live onto the PTS, I would guess, on the 21st after they have announced the patch, and will be up for around 3 or 4 weeks, I think they've said. But do any of you have any problems with any of the merged talent cards? Do you think some of these healing champions are going to be too strong, or some of the champions that are getting stuff merged into their base kits going to be strong? I personally hope we'll see some more Maeve. I've been having a lot of fun playing her with the new skin in 1.9, the new patch, the Merrymaker Maeve, and she is a fun champion to play. But generally, I think most of these changes are good, and I'm relatively positive for Paladins in 2019. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Joshino.